All right, starting recording. Okay, so to kick things off, it's really just an opportunity for both the Dynamic side and Salesforce side to ask their last minute questions concerning the products and how to best deliver and meet Dexter, Eric and Anthony's business needs today. So I think it's worth just, if you guys want, at least on the Dexter side, Eric or Anthony, just take a minute, maybe 30 seconds, just to re-summarize and reiterate the pain points, challenges, and the business goals that you guys want out of this new platform that you guys are looking for.
Yeah, I'll give a little bit of a background here. So I think you guys well know that we're on sugar today, and our problem statement is really, if I could even back up, is that we did the administration of the system wholly in-house, and we quite honestly didn't have guidance or didn't seek guidance on the different incremental process pieces that we put into play. We thought we understood the system functionality well enough to implement the next thing, and so on and so forth. And what we found ourselves with today, by doing that in such a closed silo, is that how we're using that system appears to be fundamentally in opposition with the intended system functionality. So that's what caused us in this, the awareness of that is born out of our inability to get funnel analytics in the way that we need it that suits our business. So let me give a description of what that really needs to be. So we have leads that can come in from all kinds of different places, right? We go through a qualification process with that, and that's really good business salesperson doing the Q&A, so on and so forth. We're converting those leads. Sometimes there's a new account, sometimes there's an existing account. We're converting that into an opportunity. There's a sales stage associated with that opportunity that we want it to go through, like an actual stage gate process. If you guys are familiar with that, there's a sequence of things that we want to see go through for development purposes. In some of these opportunities, it can be one order and we're at a production stage. In other cases, it could be several orders that happen incrementally that sometimes we can plan for, sometimes just happen as a nature of the iterations as the project develops, that ultimately progress through, shall we say, our transaction funnel. Now, our opportunity funnel is where we have the blind spot today. We have no ability to look at our funnel in a traditional funnel analytics type of way on the opportunity. The only thing we have is the stuff about transactions. Now, we actually care about both. So when we look at this saying, the nature of, we've actually got a couple different brands here that come into play. So we need multi-brand functionality as well. One of our brands is literally, it's a distribution business, and the sales process there is like that. It's price and availability. Here's your quote, and there you go. The bulk of our business is engineered products. Now, in that engineered products business, we thrive, and we're largely only taking on new opportunities that are likely to have serial production behind them. So when I say serial production, when we get there, that is going to have maybe one or two purchase orders a year as they update and flow to us. But this is going to happen over many years. So once it's at a production, the opportunity is at a production stage, we still have many transactions that are going to happen along with that. And we care about tracking those. But that's more for sales and operations planning purposes, so on and so forth. We want to track that because we need to make sure that that business continues to come. And that's actually part of where we track our customer retention as well. Now, tracking those transactions at a production stage, we have that today, but our funnel analytics only give us that. The tracking of what's happening in our funnel on the opportunities as they're progressing or not, that's where we have a blind spot. We basically need a system that can allow us to do analytics at both of these respective levels. So long story short is we painted ourselves into a corner here. because of how we developed our use of the current system. So it's not to say that we have to make a change. It's to say that we've got to do something absolutely differently. And no matter what we do, we fully understand it's going to be heavy lifting to do it. But for the health of the business and the continued scalability of our business, the current state we have today must change. So we're happy to have you all here. Did I miss anything?
Perfect. Anything to add, Anthony?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say anything to add in addition to that, Anthony?
No, I think the key point also with that is that he mentioned the multi-brands. We want it to roll up or roll down. We're going to be able to segment it to the brand level and also have a full picture of all our brands. So easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's also something that we don't have today. Our distribution business today doesn't operate in CRM at all.
Perfect.
We got, shall we say, the kind of analytics that you would expect out of a business operating in 1985.
Eric, Anthony, if it makes either of you feel better, that's not the first time we've heard these types of issues. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of peace of mind. I think I might be the only one that you haven't met yet. So before I hop into some questions, I'll introduce myself. I'm Allie Soba. I'm a strategic core solution engineer at Salesforce. So I work alongside Connor, Nate, and Nick for customers like yours who are looking to essentially transform the business a bit, right? Like what you have going on today, it worked up until this point, right? There's a reason that you set it up the way that you did, and you obviously are at an inflection point where it just doesn't work anymore. And when we work with only small and growing businesses similar to Dexter's kind of size and inflection point, like I said, we hear this a lot. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of peace of mind that, you're not the only ones to have set up a CRM that just doesn't work for you anymore. So I think I'm following along in terms of some of the challenges, and I certainly want to spend some time digging into them. But before we do, I am curious about kind of the business impact. Like what's going to happen to the business if you don't make a change? Like how much longer do you think you could go on doing things the way that you're doing? Are you going to be able to hit the goals that you have set? Are you going to be able to surpass them? Like, I guess my question is, what happens if you don't do anything?
The next Eric will solve this. That'll be what happens.
Well, we don't want that.
Yeah. So let me give some context here. So we are, as much as we're an engineered products business and we thrive on serial production type items, our primary markets are highly regulated, complex and precision manufacturing requirements. We're not doing any finished goods. We are high mix, low and medium volume. Almost every SKU we have is sold to one customer. That's in our core engineered product business. Now in the distribution business, we can have 10 customers per a standard part, whatever. That's easy stuff. The growth rate that we've been on since I've been here, and I've been here a little over 6 years. We had a goal to double the size of the business within 7 years, and we did it. And our growth rate right now, quite frankly, is honestly, it is accelerating, even in the environment we have going on here. Based on the long range planning that I've done, I believe that our growth curve and our growth rate stagnates in 3 years. It starts to level off. We pass that point of inflection in about 3 years. And the reason that's concerning for us is that our sales cycles, because we're serving highly regulated markets, our sales cycles are long. 3 years is the cause to act now. This isn't so if Allie, if you're asking a question, say, okay, are they ready?
Yeah.
The time is now, because if we don't fix what we're doing and how we're doing it now, that inflection point in the long range projections comes true.
And I also think, Allie, to your point, I think what we did is we serially created the issue ourselves we solved one problem by addressing an issue we had, and then we created it, and then we did it again and again. And eventually we're at the end where we can't create any more solutions because the system is all kind of a mismatch of opportunities. So that's where we're at right now, is that and then untangling that is what we need to do. And I think in addition to that, for that growth rate, it's
that's an organic growth rate too, by the way. If we were to go do another, we've done one acquisition about 1.5 years ago. that was, our CRM was not a drop-in ready for that. We had to shoehorn that in. It's mostly working now. If we were to go do another acquisition, like, I don't even know what we'd do. So just to kind of bring this all back is like, no, the time to act is now. And I'm sure the question is, okay, what kind of money we got set aside for all this? Don't worry about that. I've got access to the purse strings on the board, and they are actively pressing me to go faster. So don't worry.
Yeah, no, I honestly, you guys are making our jobs, certainly all of our jobs, right, a little bit easier, because a lot of times when customers say like, yeah, we can get to our goals if we don't make any changes, it's like, well, then why would you? But you're thinking about it the right way, right? Generally we're like, well, how far is that going to take you? Eventually you're going to have this conversation, and you don't want to go back and change your entire system, your process, technology when you have to, right? Because it's too late at that point. Like you're backtracking and things like that. So I know we have 45 minutes, and certainly want to make sure that we really get the gist of what is going to move the needle for you all. I heard quite a bit, most of which is kind of sales process, forecasting, things like that. Is that really where you feel like the number one priority lies? Is there anything in terms of post-sale and cross-sell, upsell? Well, maybe it's not cross-sell, upsell, but like kind of repeat business within your current account base that's also top priority? Like help us prioritize like where we should spend the time today to really understand where your pain points are that would help move the needle for Dexter the most.
One thing to clarify about that, and that's the other point, is that in your normal scenarios where you would work with a business, there would be a sales process that would hand over to production, and that customer would reorder that part every time, right? And then that would just be a production PO issue. It actually has to be requoted every time. So it has to go through our sales team every time we touch it because of all these issues, and then feasibility in the buying cycle. So that's that second funnel that Eric was talking about, was the fact that it's in there because of that issue. And so when we start mingling those things, that's where it becomes complicated. And as far as our future growth rate goes, or our forecasting goes, as far as like continuing customer residual sales and customer retainment, yeah, we definitely want to make sure we can measure that. We measure it now, not so much, but our data is relatively cold, and we're just getting into an automation system so we can determine what's valuable, what's not. So through 2018, and we're rolling through that. So we'll know in a matter of months what we've got, but as of right now, we don't.
So on the forecasting side, we are currently doing forecasting outside of CRM today, and that's got to do with, we used to do it inside, and then there was something that Sugar changed, and I think it ended up, our use case and how we were set up ended up becoming incompatible with that forecasting module. So we rather than figuring it out because we were frustrated, we said, all right, well, the forecasting isn't complicated, we'll just do it offline. So when I say, I want to make sure I add clarity to that, though, is that when we have the sales team doing forecasting, the usual exercise that they're going through is about forecasting orders. And there's a philosophical thing that we've instilled in the organization, is that we don't want salespeople forecasting sales so much. We want them forecasting orders. We have departments of people that manage the backlog and make sure the shipments happen when the customer wants them to happen, as they're up. We don't need salespeople doing it, right? Now that said, with a caveat, we also do either quarterly or semi-annually, we're doing some updated long range, or shall we say more, not long range, medium term type sales forecasting for orders that, hey, we don't have yet, we're not going to have for another 4 to 6 months. Okay. What is that likely to mean for operational needs down the roads, right? So that's where we do, that's a little bit more of an FP&A. Anthony and I talked about this a bit last night, and actually, for what it's worth, we realized we were using different nomenclature for the same things in some cases, and in some cases we were actually using the same nomenclature for different things. So if anything, pay attention to the words we're sharing here, because we're now fully calibrated. We actually, both of us kind of went back and forth saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we were able to do these FP&A related kind of sales forecasting out of the tool as well? There's a blessing and a curse to that. This is where, if it's there, cool, probably would do it out of the gate. And we're thinking about that for user adaptation specifically. The more stuff that's in there that we expect them to do, the longer the ramp is going to be to get them to integrate to it. So Would that be a cool thing later on? Yeah. What we definitely would want out of the gate is order forecasting, though, because that's core activity that they need to be doing. Quite frankly, we ask them to do that on a weekly basis. So some FP&A related things that we could do down later on for mass data extraction and not doing special spreadsheet exercises. That could be interesting.
Anything to get rid of spreadsheets. I get that. That's not going to be overnight. Let's just to call a spade here, right? But that could be a long-term thing. I know the Microsoft team, I'm sure, has questions, and I promise I'm not going to hijack this whole conversation. I want to be fair here. But one question I did have that I think would be valuable for all of us. I know you sent over the list of requirements, and you really just touched upon kind of what a phase one really would look like of must-haves, right? But I also want to make sure that we're considering long-term, right? Because as I mentioned in the beginning, last thing we want to do is put together a recommendation, and I'm sure all the other teams feel the same way. We don't want to just solve for your problems now. While that's important, that's just as important as what else you're going to need down the road. Is there anything else that we should be aware of in terms of like requirements that are just kind of must-haves now that isn't on that list, as well as long-term where you see the company growing to, where else you see the needs lying, right? Like those sales forecasting, having it in one place would be cool. Like, great, that sounds like a down the road thing. What else should we be aware of when we're putting together recommendations of how we might be able to solve your issues as they stand today, as well as long term, of what you might want to be able to grow into?
Wow. If I knew all that stuff, I probably would be in your seat.
Yeah, I'm thinking the things that there's so many different ways I could answer that question, right? And it just through my experience, Sugar is now the fourth CRM that I've worked with before. Fourth, and quite frankly, I've used it in different types of sales processes, different types of buying cycles and market influence. I mean, one of the things that we need to make sure that we do robustly, and we are actively investing in it. We've actually got a data analyst starting on Monday. We need robust system capability for not only, shall we say, in-tool analytics, but also the ability to do the external analytics for it. Because we can't foreshadow all the different ways that we're going to want to look at things in the future, because quite frankly, we don't know what our problems are going to be yet. We don't know exactly what angle we're going to need to look at things from. But having the ability to do that both in-tool and externally is going to be really relevant for us. Yeah. And I say that specifically because on our journey, since Anthony's been here, this is the reason Anthony was here, is that we needed to implement marketing automation and embrace the world of digital marketing. We now have Marketo launched. Marketo will be the bedrock of the marketing function, of the fundamental elements of how marketing automation and CRM interact. That's the stuff that needs to be there, without getting into, shall we say, the nuts and bolts of what that needs to look like. I mean, that is what our future state needs to include.
Yeah, I would also say that part of us that got us here is that we had poor support, right? They never had a support mechanism to support our business that was growing at the rapid rate that we were. And so therefore we got into the mess partially because we outpaced our support that they offered. So having that kind of support, and if we're continuing to grow that way, it can happen, which means we have to be dynamic. That means we need to have support that can help us solve problems. That's going to be key as well to get us from point A to point B. And to predict what we don't know. We don't know until we get there. And so, and then also helping us with best practices of data handling, data cleanup, so we can be dynamic.
Flexibility, right? Like I certainly didn't mean to put you both on the spot. I realize that's a loaded question. It's more so like a wish list, right? Like if you're having this conversation, I imagine you've thought through like what, like in an ideal world, right? Like if you could just have everything you want. So I always like to offer that up. I'm not necessarily saying it's going to be set in stone, but flexibility is key, right? As I keep mentioning, and I won't beat a dead horse anymore. You're not going to need the same things today that you need a few years down the road. It's just how business works. So
yeah, I mean the things that we're like we need to have, we use in Sugar today, and it works reasonably well. I'm assuming is baseline stuff that exists in both your guys' platforms, right? Is, being able to create and assign tasks that are associated with different records, right? I mean, that's basic stuff. Being able to do like a document retention function for like NDAs and supply agreements and stuff like that, with some notes about different things. Like, that's the stuff that we're using today and works reasonably well. But I would, frankly, I don't even, we didn't put that on the priority list because we assumed those things to be just direct baseline functions that we would be able to get anyway.
Right. And there's no, I know you mentioned like it's going to be like a process either way, but there's no point in picking up what you're doing today and just putting it in another tool. So I would imagine like there's some kind of table stake stuff, which most CRMs just do that you didn't put on there, which makes total sense. But if you were just going to copy and paste your process, it's kind of a waste of time and money to do that, to move to another system. So.
Yeah, I think for what it's worth, we are living the process today the way we want to live it. The system that we're using is not configured to facilitate that. So as much as I fully understand, usually when you're going through a CRM change out, there's like, hey, organizational change readiness, you got to review your processes and refine that. We've actually already got that documented. We are living it despite our current system.
Yeah, I was going to give the Dynamics team an opportunity to start asking some questions. So Chris, Jesse, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I can jump in because you've mentioned analytics quite a bit. Specifically funnel analytics, and I think we can make some assumptions around kind of typical stage gates, and you mentioned brand level and just things that you want to be tracking there, but just wanted to confirm if there are a few top 5 metrics that when you're thinking about how you want to look at the funnel, what would those be, and how would you want that sort of displayed?
Yeah, I mean, awesome. And those are good questions. And there's some things we can't do now. Like right now we can say quantity and somewhat dollar amount, but it's all messed up. That's the issue we're having with it. And the funnels that we have, the 2 independent funnels are merged into one big funnel. That's what's causing all the issues. So having those 2 funnels separate, I would like to have, volume of unit, number, and then velocity through the system, which we don't have right now. It's how fast that is moving through the system for each stage gate. That would be fantastic on the funnel. As well as, well, that's probably it. And then also
being able to segregate that out by lead source, by market, by, functional responsibility of where the individual that made the inquiry, doing those kind of things. So funnel velocity, the incremental hit, yield rate through each step of the funnel, how that's being able to take that down to, so many different variables and look at it from different angles, so that we can not only evaluate the effectiveness of our processes, there could be salesperson effectiveness that comes into that, right? Yeah. There's elements of that actually feed back into marketing analysis for, shall we say, campaign effectiveness, things along those lines.
Percent conversion through the funnel too. But it's going to automatically calculate the percent conversion through that funnel.
Yeah, dwell times. Yeah. All that good stuff
would be. That's our wish list. There you go, Allie. There you go. There's one.
So makes sense. Just for purposes of how we articulate in a demo, just wanted to make sure we highlighted some of those keys. As you would expect, we can cover all the above, but in the demo scenario, just thinking through the priorities, and then.
Let me add. There's one piece of that I want to make sure that we don't get lost there. As much as we're mentioning the analytics here heavily, of course, any management team wants the analytics. Give me the reporting. I need to make sure that the philosophy here for us is the analytics have to be there, but the entire priority of what we're doing has to stick and has to be adding value to the frontline salesperson's day, or I never get what I want out of this. The analytics won't matter if the user adaptation and integration suffers. So as much as we can say, hey, this is all the stuff we want, user design and simplification and facilitation of the sales process has to be there.
And I could interject and add to it, because at a certain point, this comes down to like an architecture model concept. because you got to think about the hierarchy. Because what I do know is I've been kind of embedded with the data with Anthony is that they have the concept of like projects, which is a multi-year project. And then that first layer, I guess, underneath it could be an actual product for that project. Then underneath that is the many pieces of that product that go into that. And I think you guys are quoting off the pieces, right? That third layer down, right? That's where you're doing the quotes. You generate your quantities, your pricing, total, sum up, everything. And how do you, like, again, this is the data model, like being able to do the funneling that they're explaining, the metrics, the analytics, but also the usability for the users to do those quoting and whatnot, and then integrating that with their ERP system.
And then we should also note that beyond that, our engineering team also uses the system as well to interact with our customers. Because after it goes through that first funnel, first steps is sales approve it. Next step, engineering gets involved with it. And they have their own area of work they actually work on too. So they have their own technical requirements that we can list out. But that's currently in our system. And that's the next stage that goes into this as well as the sales rep. So having those two stages where they can communicate effectively, move it effectively through the system easily, and also provide us good metrics so we know where it's broken before they know where it's broken would be also good.
Makes sense. I think you kind of answered this then, because my next follow-up was really just more about audiences, because you're right. We talk about analytics and sort of running the business. I think that's kind of where the management, but from a sales user perspective, just understanding how you would envision they would interact with it. So what are some thoughts that are maybe limiting today that would help with that user design? If you're getting complaints or, said the tool's not working for you today in your process, what would the feedback be from the sales team? What do you think some of those key wins would be for them?
Oh, I get that. I know that. Too many.
Hey.
Too many
You
fields.
led the exercise.
Too many options they have to click through. Too much work. In our engineering team, it's disparate the way it's laid out. They have a hard time. They have multiple tabs they have to click back and forth on during the process. It's just not built right.
Yeah, there's one of the things that the team is, as much as we shared with you guys all the other stuff, when you actually get into the, shall we say, day-to-day nuances, there's inconsistent use. And that actually creates a lot of noise in our process. And we believe the inconsistent use is really born from two things. One, we didn't do training very well. And especially as we've handled turnover as any organization has in the last couple of years, that kind of got exacerbated. However, there's also a component of this that's born from, there's just too many damn options there. Like, we haven't done a good job about maintaining, a clean and efficient user interface, and only keeping the options forward that really should be there. So, as we say, we've tried to 5S that a couple of times, and inevitably when we go to do that, we find out some group off in the corner is using a particular field, and they start crying and moaning because we're talking about taking it away because it adds too much noise to other people's day. So this is how this stuff has become a bit of a vicious cycle for us, if I'm painting a picture there. But too many options can also be a problem too.
I think that was we had a free for all. We had like a kind of going a little nuts there, but yeah, and I think that's along with the process that we did.
Yeah. Well, I think that on top of that, this is one of the things where comes into play, is that having a multi-brand configuration so that we can have different, shall we say, I use that term too much, really, shall we say. Thanks for reminding me.
I like it though.
It's sucking up. So that we can have a different interface based on the brand that actually facilitates that brand's specific sales process.
That's a good point. And then
that'll help a lot.
And then you have to think that at the end, and this is where it gets a little more interesting, is that some of our reps work across multi-brands. And so they might quote one brand or the other, and then where the lead source came from at this time. We're doing that, but they might have to quote one of the other brands. And we don't want them trying to figure out or think, oh, this was the MC brand, this is Dexter brand, this is DXP brand in their head. Yeah. They have to be able to just automatically go through the system automatically. And I think that was a rough part for us. There was one more. I'll think of it later.
There could be a structural issue behind that too, though.
Are most of your reps pretty seasoned then, meaning like they've been with you for quite a while? Because that, that seems to probably is the onboarding process difficult for them to be able to get up to speed on all those things, or is that pretty hammered out?
I would love to say that we're stellar at onboarding, and the fact of the matter is we're not bad at it. But I also say, okay, average tenure of frontline salesperson is, we got an outlier at 37 years now, I think. But aside from that, it's all sub 10 years.
For the
more
industry,
along the lines of- I'm sorry?
I said for the industry, is that pretty standard? Is that like, I don't know if y'all have any kind of goals for that. Obviously, like in tech, it's a little bit different. So that's why I'm asking if that's something that.
Yeah, one of the things that we realized, even with Sugar, the way we had is we hadn't been using like the help text along with it, and that's one thing that we started to do more recently to help with that acclimation to, no, there may be some nuances that we all internally understand, but somebody new coming in is like, I don't know what that means. So we started more actively using help text on specific fields. That's something that we definitely wouldn't want to lose. But I think there's a broader piece, even when you take a step back, about focused training for onboarding purposes. The way we had gone about that, we recorded sessions not so dissimilar from this, and we keep that as a part of our archive within SharePoint that is there for people to go pull from. The issue there is they have to pull from it, right? And their awareness of what's there and how they might make more efficient use of that. It's not front of mind because it's sitting off and tucked away in SharePoint, right? So
sorry, we'll also think if you got the sheet, then a couple of the brands, they inline with WooCommerce integration, Epicor integration, those are other areas. So I think I put those on the list as well. So those are brand. Epicor is company specific, but it's all our brands, but Woo is specific to one brand.
Got it. Chris started asking a little bit about this before, but just to kind of make sure I'm understanding too. And Anthony, you mentioned that some of your reps are managing multiple brands, right? And you want to just at the end of the day, this is all about, Eric, to your point, like making it really easy for your sales team. If you make it easy for your sales team, the data is going to live in the system. If the data lives in the system, you can use analytics to view it, and then you can forecast properly and all that fun stuff that we're getting there. But it all starts with the sales reps finding value in it. So for reps that are managing multiple brands, or even ones that aren't, do you ever run into an issue where maybe they're logging into Sugar or going to another system and they're just seeing a bunch of data or information that they don't need, or they're being asked to put in information that they don't need? Like, is part of the issue, I don't really want to use the word complexity, but like at the end of the day, we're trying to make it as simple as humanly possible while getting the information we need and then being proactive with giving back information to the sales rep. So like my question there is there ever a situation where a rep kind of logs in and they have to navigate themselves and just know off the top of their head, for this brand, this is the information we have to put in, for this brand, this is, or something like that?
Yeah, there's what's happening today. So I'll give some situation specific context here. So when we acquired a competitor of ours a little over a year ago, I'll use the actual term, it's magnetic component engineering, or MCE. The sales process that business had was actually almost non-existent. It was customer asked for a quote, provide said quote. That was the sales process. There was no analytics to back up any of that. There was no CRM, nothing. So we looked at that and we compared and contrasted how that sales process for that business should look. And then we looked at our core business under the Dexter Magnetic Technologies brand. And we said, you know what, the sales processes here don't need to be different. So as of today, the sales process is the same. However, lead sources coming in are different. And that's important for the sales rep to know that, hey, this lead came from this channel and they're likely to acclimate to this type of value proposition, even though the process for us internally is the same. Now, we have a brand study that we've kicking off now, literally now, where we're going to get some objective feedback on what does the market care about either of these brands? Do we keep both? Do we kill one? If we keep both, how different does the market understand them, and how should we orient ourselves better about that? There's an entirely possible outcome that says that, hey, we need to actually separate these two brands and have separate processes associated with that, to a certain extent anyway, in which case the look and feel of the magnetic component engineering, shall we say, brand partition within the system is looking different for whatever particular reason than the Dexter Magnetic Technologies one. So as much as I say all that, the third brand is DXT. That's our distribution business. And doing all kinds of qualification questions when somebody says, I have a standard part number, I just need price and know how much you got in stock. We're not going through qualification questions and stuff like that, right?
Is that automated, or you have a sales team for that too?
Yeah, so today we have a separate sales team for that, but we do have for the main Dexter brand and the MCE brands, the sales teams are harmonized. We may have to, based on what the market study we're doing, have our oh crap moment. We need to actually split those back out again. And in which case the processes probably should be different if we're going to have separate sales teams focused on those things. So this is where it comes interesting, is that, hey, in our current state, we need to know where the leads are coming from. And that's a relatively easy thing to do. We can pass that stuff through Marketo, right? But we might need to have the ability to say, hey, this lead came in from this channel and we need this brand experience for it. And it, shall we say, automatically selects the proper partition. We need the users to look at that and say, oh no, that actually doesn't belong here. We need to put it in another one. We're handing it off to another resource potentially within the organization, but be able to flip that between partition types.
Okay, just to make sure I'm following, then you want Marketo. Obviously, Marketo helps with like the brands, and I'm imagining it does like top of funnel marketing, things like that, maybe even like down funnel too. But it's at some point I'm not sure if you're doing this today, but it sounds like the ideal situation is when Marketo does pass a lead over, or if a lead comes somewhere else, the sales rep themselves, they get to determine essentially some of the outreach based on the source, because they kind of know better. Or in an ideal world, do you want Marketo to be able to handle that?
Are you asking about as far as nurturing the customer goes, or you're asking for like handling the sale?
Well, I'll take both answers, Anthony, if you have.
Nurturing the customers will be in Marketo. We're going to be doing it all in line. We're trying to take that out of the sales rep's hands and get them in front of the customers with hotter leads, right? And then hotter leads and the residual sales. Those two things should be taking up most of their time. On the other side of it is that when they hit the sales rep should be working the sale and the deal accordingly with the right brand message that they have for that brand that the customer is resonating to. Some customers don't want design, which is what Dexter is. Dexter's all about design. MCE is more about just quick production. So if they have a design and we start pitching a design, customers tend to get upset with us. So, and then go find someone that doesn't pitch design.
It becomes more of a behavioral approach than necessarily like a totally different type of sales process. It's just how that sales process is approached is really what the difference is as of today.
One's more high level, one's more lower. Think of the market like the offerings. Dexter would be the higher level offering. The stripped down offering would be the MCE offering that was just offer machine, right? So, and maybe some hand holding and optimization, but not a lot.
Does that process take a lot of time for the sales reps, or is that's like easy to manage? Like I'm trying to think through what else could we with like either, our technologies take off the sales reps plate to make their lives a little bit easier so they could spend more time, right? Kind of just going back to the most value add for them.
Leads aren't really flowing in yet.
That's not a CRM issue. That's a
Marketo issue. So we haven't
SEO issue.
we haven't connected everything yet for Marketo. They do get leads for MCE, but they kind of just manage it, right? Kind of the same process. Right now, everything flowing in there is Dexter. So, and we're waiting for MCE to turn the brand study to determine what we need to do, and then we're going to accelerate behind one or the other brands, because it doesn't make sense to be putting a lot of weight behind MC brand if it's not going to, we don't know yet.
Yeah, so I think if I could summarize all that, it's one of those things where we know we need the ability to partition the system based on brand, part of that is just because of our existing brands and how those may evolve, but also for potential acquisitions that we would be making, whenever those occur.
Yeah.
So I think I would look at this and say, hey, don't worry so much about the nuances there. The partitioning thing is the relevant piece, and demonstrating how that would work, and what the user experience would look like there, and maybe some of the options.
Yeah.
That's the relevant piece. How it's done today, I think we're actively telling you that may well change even in 3 months, right?
So assume both options, that it may be a single channel or multiple channel.
So could we just real quick explore the sort of the quote to order process? It seems like that's sort of the critical component here, both in terms of how that gets communicated, from an engineering perspective, but for the seller, is that one of the more time consuming pieces? And I just want to make sure we understand the role that you're thinking of, or the vision of how that would work with Epicor.
Yeah.
You're doing your quoting today through Epicor, or how does that?
Yeah, we're doing our quoting today through Epicor for the Dexter brand and the for the Dexter brand and the DXT brand. The MCE brand, we're actually doing that in Word.
Okay.
Bear with me. We do have a project going on right now that's because we realize we've got totally different process times, and there's a lot of waste and all that. So we're actually in process of implementing quoting into CRM now, even full well understanding that sugar may not stay. We care about it so deeply about putting the quote process into CRM that we're doing it, acknowledging the risk that we may well move on from that here in the short term.
Okay, so that answers my question. Ideally, we'd like to have this handled more, simply from the sales user perspective in CRM, feed into Epicor, but sort of simplify that process. Okay.
Yeah.
That's going to help with some of the analytics that you're talking about.
Yeah. And then some of the standard functionality in the background about automatic routing for approvals and so on and so forth. I mean, today we're doing all that stuff offline, and it's, the auditability of that is fundamentally absent.
Yes, because that leads into sort of the discount controls and that as well, which you could manage. I think that would be
the discount controls for us based on our business today actually only matter to the DXT brand.
Okay.
Yep. The rest of the engineered products business, it's literally, we just go with market pricing approach there, and the sales reps manage that.
Okay. And is that sort of standard level based on certain clients, or the rules on that? That looked like there was some desire to have that be automated. So do you kind of have those rules around discount controls for that brand?
Yeah, there's the way it's for the DXT brand, the way it's done today is they're basically afforded column over pricing. So one tier down from, you got multiple different quantity breaks and all that stuff. They do that socially, having some controls built into the system for that, it would help poke-yoke it. That's a nice to have, not necessarily to have.
Got it. And then I think Jesse may have questions too, and I'm sure Salesforce team may have more. I think the one thing I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on how you'd see this sort of demo flow. You've got your requirements list or your desires, things that we're talking about. I'm guessing there's a few different audiences here, so it's important to make sure we're kind of working the flow the way the business works, and so kind of who's planning to attend. How do we see the audiences? They're going to care about different things. So have you thought through how you'd sort of want that script to flow through?
Yeah, definitely. I would say if anything for ease of understanding would be top to bottom. I mean, I'd like to start with like how Marketo connects into it, that goes through the lead handling, that then goes through the flow to the rep, and how that would be, that rep gets converted from lead to opportunity and then into the funnel. And then make sure we have that funnel analytics for NPI, and then also for that sequential sales in the downward stream, and then all the way through the engineering profile. I think that's where I want to see it go for each brand. I think the people in it, me, you, and everything else when it's running there.
Yeah, we need to confirm the personalities, but yeah, we need more than just a couple of bosses here doing goodwill. We need input from others, and we haven't identified the specific names yet. But other we need individual contributor in, and then we probably need like a sales leader in too.
Kim would be there.
Yeah.
Kim would be there. So our new analyst would be in there. That would be true.
A good question. We clearly caught us on our heels.
We thought about it, but the reason why we're cagey about it is that once we announce anything going on, sales reps will stop entering stuff in sugar.
Yeah.
And then once they stop entering stuff in sugar, then we got a whole nother problem on our hands, because then now we have to find how fast we can get there, because they're going to be waiting for it. They're going to have the why bother attitude.
Yeah, and it may not be critical for this at this stage. Just, we can think through sort of buy-in and whatever else, but we want to make sure that the time that we're spending from our end and yours to do a demonstration is going to hit the mark. So, just understanding kind of what the key things are, and then obviously looking at what you said, Anthony, is sort of the kind of the life cycle of it is how we can focus it. But there's different areas that you have in your requirements around, like you mentioned, analytics and custom dashboards, and like just thinking through that as sort of the output, but walking through sort of the full life cycle of the opportunity to quote to order. So just thinking through that is sort of a different scenario. So we'll want to work through those scenarios. But at some point, just understanding who's all going to be in the room in terms of the persona.
What I could say is, the one thing that my board is going to require is confirmation that this gives us the funnel visibility from the two different angles that we had talked about before. And without that, there is no money, there is no project, right? And so long as that's there, the rest of it is up to us too. That's it.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's leave it one question each. Chris, if you want to ask one more, then turn it over to Salesforce for one more questions, then we'll close it with next steps.
That was my main last question. I don't know, Jesse, if you had anything else, but I think we're pretty good at this point. You guys have provided sort of the flow in terms of your process. So if that's, Anthony, to your point, to try to follow that through the life cycle, I think that gives us good guideline.
Yeah,
I
no, I
guess-
appreciate that,
Oh, sorry,
Chris. Thanks a lot. That's kind of where I was going as well. I was curious on the demo script, and I appreciate you walking through that, Eric and Anthony.
Yeah, go ahead, Ellie.
It's kind of subconscious to us, actually.
I think just it's always helpful for us to know if anybody on the team has experience with Microsoft or Salesforce, if this would be new. I know some demos have been shown, so it's not going to be the first time you've seen it, but I'm always just curious to understand like how you selected Salesforce and Microsoft to evaluate as potential CRMs to move to if you have experience, or how you came to a conclusion.
It was just a luck of the draw. Congratulations.
We hear that a lot. That's not the first time.
No, it was. I've worked with Salesforce at a big company, which was a Danaher company, and then a small kind of like software company, which was using for both ends. For one was very kind of technical business, one was very component driven, big business. And the other one was I used Dynamics at Medline, which was the company I was at previous to this one, which was a huge medical company that we were implementing Dynamics in. So I've had experience in both.
Yeah, for me, this is, I had mentioned before, this is the fourth CRM. Sugar's the fourth CRM I've worked with. My first one was ILM. If you never heard of it, I wouldn't be surprised. Second one was SAP. Third one was Salesforce. This is when I was with Trimble. That was the corporate standard. It was, you want CRM, here you go. So I went through a launch with that, and then the fourth one here is Sugar. So short piece, I don't have experience with Dynamics, but one of the things that I think is very interesting about Dynamics is everything else that we do. Our entire IT infrastructure is based around Microsoft products. So we thought that as much as my lack of experience there was some general enthusiasm about the ability to integrate with some other functions that we already do and how that could affect our process capabilities. Yeah, and security too, because we are on GCC high, we do considerable amount of business through the DoD supply chain. Now, Salesforce, you guys got the ecosystem advantage. Like it's a beautiful thing. But I mean, you guys are both market leaders for very interesting yet different reasons, and that's quite frankly that's why you're both here.
And then the other reason I picked it is I wanted something that connected to Marketo as well. Because Marketo is here, we have it for the next foreseeable future. And I want it to connect well, and I want it to be able to be supported by our team. And so I had experience with these two, and so also kind of like a recommendation on it, like supporting us in this. So because Mike's been my integrator for Marketo from the start. So
Perfect. So with the last 5 minutes, I think it's appropriate, Eric or Anthony, if you want to outline your next steps and ultimately what your expectations.
yeah, I guess the next steps for us is demos. I know you're in Europe next week.
Yep.
The following week we're good.
Yeah, it would have to be the week of the 29th at the earliest.
So the week of the 29th, we can have demonstrations that week. There would be two. I would say 45 minutes with 2 minutes Q&A. I don't want to go over that. Just we don't have a lot of. Just if that's good enough for you guys to get it out. If at that point, if you guys need anything from us, like let me know. You can contact us directly. And then we'll help. I think that would be the next steps, followed by one last question is migration of our existing data. And make sure you cover that as well. Because I want to know how we're going to get our data out of the sugar system and into your system efficiently, effectively, and efficiently with the changes that we need to make our funnel work. That's key as well. So I'm sure Mike has been living that with me right now. So
Past demonstration, we intend to have ink on paper with whatever path we're choosing by mid-June.
Perfect. Okay.
Mhm.
So then,
implemented by end of year.
yeah. So then let's see, syncing up calendars, you guys were talking week of the 29th. Is it scheduled yet? Or should we coordinate that now?
Go ahead. I got my calendar.
You can see mine. So.
I was like,
Yeah, we'll just have Salesforce go first, and we'll sit in on that demo as well. I'm all joking. No reaction from Ellie at first.
and you guys
First,
can
I was like,
coordinate.
listen, like I'm all for it. We'll sit on yours because we'll all learn something. You know what I mean? We're all friends here. At the end of the day, we just want what's best for everybody. So.
Yeah, I think was the first time around. Did they go to Dexter last time?
All right, so Anthony and I were just talking here, just so we can block our calendars and give you guys some flexibility to coordinate with whoever you might. We're going to block off our calendars for Thursday, June 1st in the afternoon, and we're on Central Time just to confirm. And just as you guys figure out how schedules will work out and who needs to be on your side, just know that we've got the afternoon of June 1st blocked, and we can go from there. So we don't feel like we have to solve all that now.
Perfect. I could own that offline. I'll be in contact with the Dynamics team, Salesforce team, and we could coordinate, mirror up calendars, and take it from there. I was asking earlier, was Salesforce on site the first time around? Do they want to do that again?
We didn't, but we can come on site for the first. Just bring our passports, right, Anthony?
Yeah, bring your
that's
passport.
right.
Yeah, your ITAR, we gotta approve your
Perfect.
Unless you want us hovering you everywhere you go.
Awesome. Great. I think this was a useful hour right here. So then I will download the recording, share it out and distribute it out to everyone, and then be in touch with what works for timing between the two teams.
Appreciate
Awesome.
it, everyone. This is great.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Cheers.
everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.